Hello, this is Janet from janetsandberg.com, and you're listening to the Phoenix Wisdom Podcast, the weekly show that talks to peers and professionals who open up about their darkest moments when they felt like ending it all, why they didn't, and how they transformed their lives in order to triumph over the darkness and despair. Please remember to subscribe if you'd like to hear more inspiring stories. Hello, and welcome to the Phoenix Wisdom Podcast. This week, we are talking to, or I am talking to, Frannie Griede. We are both Canadians, which makes it a little bit more exciting. We've had a couple of Canadians on the show, which I haven't really talked about, but it's always nice to have another Canadian on here with me. I'm Janet Sandberg, your host, and let's start by hearing a little bit about Frannie.
Well, thank you so much, Janet, for having me here. It's definitely an honor. This is my very first podcast too, so bear with me as I stumble through some of my words. But yes, my name is Frannie Griede. I am Canadian. I'm on the western side of Canada, so Edmonton, Alberta. I'm a transformational coach and empowerment coach. That is it's a bit of a journey as to how I became one, and then my main business is a online beauty marketplace called Contactez. So there's a story behind all that, but I'm sure that we'll be able to unlock those soon enough.
Well, yes, and yeah, and since this is audio only, you can't see her cute dogs wandering around in the background. But yeah, I have developed a new love of dogs. I never used to like them at all, and then I married a man who came with a dog, and now I love dogs. So you never know when and how your life is going to change in unexpected ways. So I never would have pegged myself as somebody who wants to get a dog ever in my life. I'm 51 years old. And, you just never know. And that's kind of the whole point of us sharing our stories on this podcast, is that even when everything is terrible and you don't see the point in carrying on, you just never know when something is going to happen that's going to change. It's going to change the way you think. It's going to change the way you feel. It's going to change the way you want to live your life. And yeah, so hang on, because you just never know when that's going to happen or how it's going to happen. So, Frannie, let's start with your story. What was going on in your life when you were thinking about not being here anymore?
So I come from a very conservative, very protective household when I was growing up. So my mom, she's Filipino. So culturally, it's very conservative, in a way, she's very controlling, very narcissistic. Okay. So I didn't have the opportunity I didn't have the childhood when you grow up, you're surrounded by love, you're surrounded by a family that cares about you, and they share with you all the things that is normal for human emotions and development. So when I was growing up, I was trying to find that missing pieces of human emotion, where I can feel true love without strings being attached to it, or feeling like I am deserving of things and worthy enough of things, regardless of what I do in my life. So it led me to being in a bad relationship. And that was when it all started. So I ended up meeting this person online. I was very young at that point. I was in my teenage years. And from there, I thought that he was the one for me, because he treated me with love and worthiness, and said things that made me feel good and heard. Only to find out that he was very narcissistic. He's an overt narcissist.
Okay.
So there's multiple different types of narcissism, but he was an overt narcissist, and he also was very abusive, very emotionally, physically, spiritually, any kind of thing that you can think of. He was very abusive on that point. So he also is a different culture than me. So he's I don't want to say it, I'll just hold off on that information.
Yeah, of
But he's
course.
definitely different from me in our culture. And so because of that, it created a clash and lots of, things that I wasn't aware of.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually led to the point of him and I living with each other. And it started to, with narcissism, you get love bombs, you get the trauma bonding, the addictions of, like trying to fulfill or trying to become someone that they would be happy with,
Right.
and
And they
from
keep moving the
there,
goalposts.
exactly, they keep moving the goalposts. With him, he tore myself apart
Yeah.
bit by bit. And one of the biggest things was that he would watch YouTube videos of like beauty people or beauty influencers, and they had filters on, and he would nitpick my beauty. Like he would nitpick my scars, he would nitpick my acne, he would nitpick my stretch marks, every bit of me. I was torn apart, and how even I perceived myself, like my personality. I wasn't allowed to be happy. I wasn't allowed to say thank you to the cashier, because maybe that cashier gave was just having a hard day, and so I'm not allowed to smile back at that person. I wasn't allowed to be me, and
Wow.
that eventually broke me down so much, and so much
Yeah.
further than that. So who I was no longer me. And also the people around me, I had no one. I had no family, I had no parents, I had no brother, I had no friends. I was very, very alone. And so realizing that, eventually I got to the point where I was like, who am I? Why am I crying? Why do I feel like this? There's so many questions in my mind. And at that time, magically happened, like the universe. I asked the universe, I was like, I feel really sad. I feel really alone. Is there something? And maybe I can get a dog. Maybe there's a small little dog that I can get to keep me company. And it was funny, I was searching online, and then there's this little tiny teacup poodle. He's black, and he was on Kijiji. It's kind of like Facebook Marketplace, but on Kijiji. And the owner there said that his owner was the grandma, and she passed away, and she's giving him away because he's not getting along with their bull mastiff. So I was like, that's the one. That's the one for me. I know it's in deep inside my soul. I knew it. Like that was just something that right?
Yeah.
I met this dog. I went to the parking lot. I'm like, I will buy him. He's mine. Just no. And so this dog, his name is Shadow.
Of course.
His name is Shadow, and he was like, he had a tough life, but he was always with me, always in my shadow. And when things got physically abusive with my ex, he was always in between us. My shadow was always like, this 5-pound teacup poodle was literally like in between us to make sure that to defend me.
Yeah.
Aww. Because when it became very physically, I was trapped, right?
Yeah.
That. So then I got another poodle a couple of years later, which is now the one I have. Shadow unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago. But that's okay. Like I'm in a better place now. So that whole entire point, there was a time after I got Drogo, which is my toy poodle. We were living in this detached home, and it was, I don't know, he was very abusive. I was ready to go. Like I was so down. I didn't know who I was anymore. I couldn't find the light. Like I couldn't find things that would make me happy. I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't find things that even, and then like, even if I was to call the people that I knew, like I didn't know what to say. I was embarrassed, right? I
Mm-hmm.
was shamed. Like I felt shameful. And I felt like there was no one who could hear me or listen to me. So and everything that he was telling me was a very, very, very loud voice. It was
Yeah.
incredibly, incredibly loud that I couldn't quiet it. I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't. And so, like, there were times when I would sit in the closet and just hide. And there were times when I would, and it actually did, I tried to like OD on stuff too,
Mm-hmm.
and even sleeping pills, right? Just so that I could sleep through it all, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
But what kept me going was my dogs,
Oh.
right? Because I knew that if I didn't feed them, no one would feed them. If I didn't take them out, no one would take them out. So they're my dogs were my saving grace.
Yeah.
There was a time when I turned the bathtub on to fill the water up. I had a razor right next to me, and I was sitting there in that bathtub, just waiting and waiting. And I was like, okay, it's like I can't take the pain anymore. The pain was too much. It
Mm-hmm.
was like it was beyond what I could continue to feel, because I felt like I was worse than a dog. That's what my ex said. He's
Oh
like, you
my
are
gosh.
worse than a dog. And that broke me,
Yeah.
because I didn't know who I was anymore. Like I'm questioning, like, even if I'm deserving to live.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then when I was in the bathtub and I was like ready, I looked at my dogs and I was like, who's gonna take care of these things? Like, Shadow would then have another owner. Maybe he wouldn't be okay anymore. What if like the owner that he ends up being with is someone who won't treat him right? Because I know as hell like my ex wouldn't be able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
He wouldn't take care of him. Yeah, he couldn't even take care of himself. Right. So I was like, okay, if not for me, then I'll do it for the dogs. I'll do it for them because they deserve it, at least. If I can get them to a point in life where they would be very happy in an environment where they can thrive, then they'll be okay. And then I could find something, then maybe there's hope for me. Maybe there's hope for me. And if not, at least I know that they're taken care of. That was
Right.
like the thing. Like they need to be taken care of before I go.
Right. Yeah.
No, that was the thing that kept me. And then that was the turning point for me where I was like, okay, if I can do that, if I can just get them somewhere safe, then I'll be okay. And then a number of things happened where it got too dark. I called the police. Police came. Everything, like, he got arrested, did some manipulation with them, made more mistakes because I went back to him
Mm.
because
That's
my parents was at the time was like said, well, imagine his mom right now knowing that he's by himself. I'm like,
oh
you're
my
telling me to go
gosh.
back? Are you telling me to go back to him? You're right, mom. No, you're right. That is in my mind, right? Like, because I wasn't in the right mindset. I went back and lived with them.
Yeah.
And they went to go see him, and he like created a show for them where they felt
Sure.
superior and everything, because that's how they were. And so I felt guilty. I was like, oh my goodness, like he's here by himself. I'm like, I couldn't do that to his mom. You're right. I couldn't do that. So I went back. And and it wasn't, it wasn't.
Yeah.
So I stuck to it for a few months. I don't know why I did. I did. And then I said, no. Something in me said, no, I deserve more. My dogs deserve more. They deserve happiness. They deserve to be healthy, to be thriving, to be like in a better environment. I deserve more. I'm worth
Mhm.
more than this. I don't want my life like this anymore.
Amazing. It's funny how, well, it's not funny, but it's interesting how our brains work, that it's always, or very often, we can see that for other people. Like, my dogs need to be taken care of. My dogs need to be happy. Like, we've stopped considering ourselves in this equation, but it's our kids, or, it's so much easier for some stupid reason
Mm-hmm.
for people who are hurting to look after those who depend on us than to take care of ourselves. And I don't know why our brains are built that way, but so
Yeah.
thank goodness for the dogs. But I wanted to come back to, also, you said, you felt so alone and there was nobody you could talk to. There was nobody you could call. And that's, I think, all of us. I think one of the major threads that are going through all of these stories that are on the podcast is that when we are in that position where we've given up, we feel like nobody in the world has ever felt this way. Nobody in the world will ever understand. And that could be true for people in our immediate vicinity. But,
I think
that's
it's
why we're doing the podcast, is so that people know, they can tune into the podcast and be like, oh, other people have felt like this and they've gotten through.
I think it's because like you don't want to burden other people. Like,
Absolutely.
it's that. And then also with what happened with my ex, he threatened. He said, if you
Mm.
go to these people, this is what's
If you
going to
tell
happen to
them,
them.
yeah.
Right. And you're silenced because of it, because you're like, what if he does?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
And, this is, I guess, when it's also important to know that there are helplines, anonymous helplines that you can call when you're struggling, so that, vile partners don't have anybody that they can harm or threaten, but you still have somebody you can talk to.
Yeah.
So
It's tougher, when you have someone who's very controlling, because they watch every move you make.
that is true. Yeah.
They watch everything, and then you have to be so careful, because if you have one slip, it's you're back under again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a roller coaster, but there is a time when there's something in you that says, I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you make that decision that, yes, I can do this and I do deserve to have a second chance at life, then you do it. I think that's the pivoting point. I don't know
Yeah.
when.
No,
There's
it's different for everybody,
yeah, it's
depending on
different for
the
everybody.
situation and who you are. But it's that rock bottom that people always talk about. And sometimes we hit rock bottom several times before we
Okay.
get to that
Yeah.
point where it's like, okay, my choices are, death or living, but not in this situation. So I'm very glad that you chose the second option, and, thankful and grateful for your dogs who were
Yeah.
there to provide that little bit of oomph to get you over that hump.
Yeah,
So
without them, I don't know. I don't even know what I do without my dogs in my life anymore.
yeah, it sounds like it. Now I'm like even more want to get a dog. So tell us about your life now. How
So
how have things changed? You left that situation, and then what happened?
so I took a leap of faith. I told myself, when I got out of that situation and then I like moved back to my parents, I told myself that there's no way I'm going to go back and be manipulated again.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did was I took a leap of faith. I went into car sales. I
All
went into
right.
sales and I did really, really good in it. And I at the same time I met my now husband, who's my soulmate. He for some odd reason I manifested him and he came at the right time. He
Mm-hmm.
helped me overcome hurdles that I think would have taken me more time if I did it alone.
Yes.
So I met him and then I started doing really well in my career. And then from there I started an online beauty marketplace, and that was a way for me to help women who have are hiding back from their skin and from the things that makes them feel uncomfortable, because when I was reminded of how imperfect I was,
Yeah.
I don't want anyone to go through that again. I don't want anyone who I come up to feel like there's something wrong with them just because they have a couple acne scars. No, it's beauty from within, how they feel, and if they feel good, they shine even brighter, they glow, they radiate. There's so much energy around them that just is that they get that they're magnetizing everything that they're deserving in life. So that's what I started, and I still have it running up until today, and I hope to grow it bigger. And then my now husband, he we manifested an incredible life. I have an incredible relationship with my father-in-law, who is like my biggest supporter as well, and
Oh,
cheerleader.
love it.
And we're living in a dream house right now on an acreage with lots of trees. We hear the loons at night and it's just
Oh,
beautiful, so peaceful. The energy is here is just so calming. If I was to tell me like 10 years ago, 15 years ago that this is my life, I don't think I would have believed it. But it's
mm-hmm.
incredible like how just from changing your decision to I deserve more. Like
Mm-hmm.
I am worthy, I'm deserving. There's so much more to what life has to offer. And now and because of that, from my transformation, I became a coach because I've noticed and I've had so many conversations and discussions with women who they also are going through that. And I have a client, she's going through that too. And it's different when you're able to go to someone to know that they've been through it and how they are
Yes.
able to overcome it.
Yeah. Well, I think
Versus-
that's so many of us in the coaching and healing world, we're just like, it took us so long to get through this by ourselves, and we're going to go out there and help other people do it better and faster and easier.
Exactly, exactly. I know that like when I went to my therapist, my psychologist and stuff, they prescribed me medication. I was like, this is not, no, I can't, this is not who I am. If I take this meds, I'm completely not me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was
Yeah.
funny how like some psychologists are able to be manipulated by a narcissist as well.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes you need to be the one for your client that resonates with each other. Like you resonate with your client resonates with you because there's that connection. And when you have that connection and you have that trust with you and your client, it's incredible.
Yes.
And I didn't have that. I did not have that when I first started my journey because I didn't know who I could go to.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I went to people who were, who had the background or had the education or the experience, they weren't what I was hoping they
What
would be.
weren't what you needed. And
Yeah,
yeah, that happens a lot, and it's worth shopping around, sometimes, like with anybody, you meet how many people every day and only a select few of them become your friends. And it's the same, you have to You have to vibe with the person you're working with. So if you see one therapist, being, counselor, social worker, psychologist, psychiatrist, whatever, and you don't get along, try somebody else, but don't give up, because it's worth. And same with coaches and healers and doctors and all of that. You have to shop around until you find the right one, because that's when things are really going to start changing, when you have that support network of people who professionals who actually support you, and they're not just there to get paid.
Yeah, I actually had a lot of inner work that I needed to do. Even when I left my abusive relationship, I thought I did all the work until I got into a safer space with my marriage and where I'm at. And all the emotions that I thought I've dealt with came out, and I was having these nervous breakdowns and like anxieties coming up, being a human repellent. Everything was going the opposite direction. And then I was like, okay, maybe I need to ask for help. And I did. And I found my therapist. I found her. She worked on me for over 4 months. And it was like I had to be there, I had to show up, and I had to do my work.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important too. Is like you have to do your work, you need to show up, you need to face whatever it is that's causing you all this stuff, this emotions, so that you can feel it. And it changes you in a totally different perspective and different level. Because if I didn't do that, I don't think I would be here today on Janet's show, nor being a transformation coach. So it did change a lot of where I am today too.
Yeah. I love what you said there about how being in a safe space allows us to work through more stuff. And, it's trauma and things like that. They're onions, right? Like you get through a layer and you're like, oh, good, I'm done. Oh no, there's another layer, and you just keep spiraling back. But every time you work through it, it gets easier, and you get better. And it's frustrating sometimes. You're like, oh, I thought I dealt with this. 5 times already.
Yeah.
And eventually you do. But every time, you feel safe, that's when your body and your emotions are going to release, because they can.
Yes.
And you held on to so much stuff for so long. So it takes time to release all of that stuff again and let it out. So I'm so happy that you found somebody who makes you feel safe and that can help you work through that stuff. I love, you've sort of come full circle, and now you're helping others. And yeah, thank you for sharing your story. Is there anything else, any sort of like advice or tips that you would give to somebody who's struggling or is in an abusive relationship? What would you tell them?
I would say use whatever you've been through as your power, because the universe doesn't throw things at you just because to hurt you. It's because there's more to your life than what you think you're currently going through right now.
Yes. And there is so much more to come that you can't even imagine.
Exactly. There is so much more. And I am the greatest example of what it is like after.
Yes, I love it. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your story and allowing me to be your first ever podcast.
Thank you so much, Janet. It's definitely an amazing experience, and I hope that this will help motivate and inspire women to take the leap of faith.
Me too. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Remember that you are loved, you are worthy, you are valuable, you are meant for more, and that it really does get better. If you are in crisis, there are numbers that you can call or text to get the help that you need. That information for Canada and the US is in the description below each episode. If you are in immediate crisis, please call 911. We love you, and I hope you'll listen again.